The show is Ask the First Selectman. Our guest, obviously, John Zagrodzky, who is the First Selectman. John, we got a question from Kathy who asks, some merchants have restricted exits from their stores onto the post road, Trader Joe's, Dunkin' Donuts being two examples. But drivers regularly disobey. What can be done about this? And in your recent town newsletter, you shared some data on traffic patterns in town. What's going on with traffic in Darien?
Okay. First of all, in terms of those restricted exits, a good question, Kathy. What we're talking about there is when you exit out of a business and you are only supposed to turn right. And the reason for that is that trying to turn left can block or slow traffic and it creates a problem. If you go down to Trader Joe's, there's actually a physical configuration. So when you come up to it, if you're going to violate that, you really have to make a sharp turn and work around the physical limitation that's been put up to encourage you not to make a left turn. In terms of enforcing that, a lot of it is trying to get drivers to do the right thing. One thing we could do is ask Trader Joe's or some of these other businesses when they put in these restricted turns to make them even more physically restrictive so that turning left out of there is just harder. I think ultimately it'll be a combination of doing the right thing and some enforcement. The police are in a position to enforce something like that, but again, it's going to be hard to have perfect enforcement. So, my recommendation is that we take a look at how to make those kinds of exits even more physically restrictive, and that's something that the planning and zoning function would take care of. But further to that, to just remind everybody that those restrictions are in place to improve the flow of traffic, which is an important thing. If I get to your next question about my newsletter, I would encourage anyone listening who's not a subscriber to subscribe to the town newsletter. That's easy to do. If you go onto the town website, there's a spot you can click on and get your email signed up for that. But in my newsletter this past Friday, I talked about traffic trends, and it started with an observation that traffic seems a lot worse. And I've looked at this quite a bit and talked to quite a few folks, not just the police, but many older and longtime, lifelong residents. And the conclusion in talking to all the folks who've been here for decades is that, look, traffic is bad, but it's not materially worse than what they recall when they were younger. The police folks that I talked to, all of them have careers longer than 25 years. And in their opinion, and they're in traffic all day long, it does not seem more than what they're used to. And so I researched that a bit. And one of the things that I found was that even though we've got more multifamily housing in town and it seems like there are more residents, the number of registered vehicles in town has actually been flat for the last 10 years. It was about 17,600 in 2015, and it's about 200 less cars today, 11 years later. So it was a real surprise to me to see that. But just going to our tax rolls, you see that we just don't have a lot more cars in this town. Now, I did some other analysis using a data service we subscribe to, and that service showed that there has been a bit of an uptick in traffic, about 4% over the last 3 years, and that most of that traffic is, if not nearly all of it, is coming from outside of Darien. So this is more cars, mostly from Stamford. And if you look at the east side of Stamford, just across the Darien line, there's a lot of new housing over there, but there's not a lot of grocery store options and sort of what I would call daily living store options. And so our thought is that a lot of those residents in that area are just popping over to Darien to go to Palmer's or any of the stores at Darien Commons or Heights Crossing or even just over to Whole Foods. And so we think that's driving some of the traffic. But also keep in mind there's a lot of electronic capability now that reroutes traffic. So not just Waze, but most modern cars with nav systems have access to traffic systems in those electronic maps. And even just today, there was an accident on 95, and I was up at exit 14. And I looked up and I could see, all right, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get on the post road to go through town, already backed up at least a mile. And so there was probably 6 or 7 light cycles I had to wait through to get through it. And that was mere minutes after the accident had happened. So that's just further evidence that Waze and these other systems, the minute there's a slowdown in traffic, they will route you on what historically have been little used roads in towns like Darien. And just because of that, we face additional traffic, particularly whenever there's a slowdown. Somebody asked me the other day, is there something we could do about it? Um, there are a few things we can put in: speed barriers and speed bumps. We can put in signs that say no through traffic. We can do a lot of those types of things. And I think at the margin, they might possibly be helpful. No municipality that I've read about has a good solution to any of this, partly because if we put those restrictions in, it affects residents, and nobody likes speed bumps. Nobody likes loud rumble strips in front of their house, and so it's a tricky problem to solve. My guess is that if anything is going to happen on that, it probably comes through state regulation and state legislation, but nothing on the horizon right now that would suggest that's going to change. So I guess the long and short of it is that traffic is maybe a little bit worse, but it's not hugely worse than it has been historically. I think with good traffic engineering, which is, by the way, what has been built into all of our recent developments, as well as things like these restricted turn or exits from businesses that Kathy talked about, I think will help us manage our traffic situation better.
If you have a question for our first selectman, send it along to us to DarienTV at DarienCT.gov, and we'll ask it on an upcoming show.